What is going on today, guys? It is the Black Lantern Brooklyn Vale, and as promised today on the live kind of, but I am graced today by the presence of the great Sandy the Sandman Robinson. Sandy, how are you doing today?
I am doing good, and trust me, we're 8 days past our Canadian birthday here, our day, July 1st, and I couldn't be happier than being on here with a fellow Canadian on the other side of the country of me, talking about great Canadian artists.
Now, like when you like, obviously this like people. There's a lot of people that are going to be like, I've never even heard about this artist, or I wasn't aware of their significance. So, for you, what is this? Was it more? Was there some nostalgic picks, or is it ones that were like, over the course of time, these artists have stayed in my favorites, maybe even of all time? What
Yeah,
was it for
no,
you?
that's a fair question. Relevance now, as well as back then, played into it for me. Impact on the world, very much, like not impact like as like a Live Aid or something like that, but did you cross over from Canadian audiences to a worldwide audiences? Nostalgia is definitely in there. Do I still listen to them? We all have digital devices now. What's on my Spotify? Are all these people on my list on Spotify in some form or another? Those were things that I took into consideration. Or do the songs stand up? Things like that. And in some cases, yes, and in some cases,
Yeah. All right. So for anybody who is unfamiliar how this is going to work, very similar to the top 10 show run by John Roca and Matt Nost. Sandy's going to do his bottom three, then I'm going to do my bottom three. Then he's going to do his next four. Then I do my next four. Then we trade one apiece at our top three. And at the end of the show, we come up with the show's list. I can't see this being too decisive, as there's probably going to be a lot of punts and a lot of yeah, that's also on my list. So I'm kind of curious to see what Sandy's list is, because we're from different generations. But I think there's going to be a lot of similarities here. So let's take it off right at the gate. Sandy, what is your number 10?
all right, my number 10 is, and I guarantee you, I almost was that this is going to be a punt, but she is a fantastic vocalist. She is, her range is very, very special, even if I don't really enjoy all of her songs. But my number 10 is Celine Dion.
Did not make my list. Did not make my list.
All
But
right.
but go on. What's going on?
So Celine Dion started off. She was like almost like an ingenue. She was young, very very young, taken under the wing of her later to be husband Renee, who unfortunately passed away. And she was just a vocal powerhouse. Like a lot of people talk about Mariah Carey and Celine Dion, or Mariah Carey and Whitney Houston, and along those lines. Well, Celine Dion was the Canadian version of that. She had the range, the power. Anything that she sung was an automatic, just it's in your head because it
Yeah.
was there. And like I said, even though I don't necessarily like her, her music is definitely up there.
I think that's what kept her off of my list, is because I think it might have for my generation, especially like when you think about Titanic. My Heart Will Go On is like one of the most overplayed songs ever. And I guess for me, Celine Dion is a more of a soundtrack specialist. Um,
Yeah.
I understand her vocal power. I actually think there's a Canadian female on here that has a better vocal range, but we'll get into that later.
All right.
But yeah, she got her big start on the was that the European talent show, or I forgot the name of it. Um, Europe Sing Star, or Europe something. Someone in the
Something
chat,
like that.
yeah, someone in the chat is going to correct me.
Yeah.
But yeah, you can't deny her vocal range and just that power that she brings into a lot of her songs. So you're number 9.
My number 9 is, they're this little band that had a couple of really good anthems that were out there that still stand up today. And personally, they are the favorite band of one of my favorite characters on TV. His name is Ricky. and he loves ROCK. What does it spell? Rock from Helix, baby.
Helix is not on my list, so
Yes. All right. So Helix is they came around in the early '80s, and they were the Canadian version of any of those hair metal bands out there that you love. They powerful chords. They weren't extraordinarily talented, but like I said, they had a couple of anthems that rocked summers for for a couple of years, and they had two really good albums. The album that Rock is on, as well as a couple of their other hits, was first, and then they released a follow up to that, and that did very, very well. They're just part, as far as I'm concerned, they're just part of that hard rock, heavy metal history of Canada that doesn't really get a lot of. We're mostly known for folk singers or country singers or things along pop singers. We didn't get a lot of like hard rock and bands, and for me, I could still throw in, like I said, about 10 of their songs are on my Spotify from their greatest hits album. So I still listen to them, so that makes them still relevant for me.
cool. Yeah, it's this is another kind of generational thing. I'm not familiar with Helix a whole lot. That is something I definitely need to fix. But I've definitely heard of the band a couple times for sure. So you're number 8.
All right, so my number 8 is the only real uh, modern person that I have on my list. I'm a big fan of this type of music. That may surprise a lot of you, but I'm a big crooner fan. I love big band music. I love this type of. I'm a big Harry Connick Jr. fan, and this guy reminds me a lot of that type of music, and that would be Mr. Michael Bublé.
Once again, did not make my list.
Oh, holy shit! All right, so Michael Bublé, as you guys may know, he's a crooner. He's a Frank Sinatra type of guy. He's got that swagger in his voice that makes you want to listen to him. It's a linky, it's very mellow, so you can just get into it and listen to his songs. And his songs themselves are very beautiful. They mean something. They have a lot of emotion behind them, which is part of his act. A lot of emotion. And even though I don't listen to him a lot, I find that I listen to him, when I just want to unwind, and it's very peaceful.
I think it's for me. I consider definitely putting him on a list, but I think it was what held him back might have been actually. I get like an auto tuney feel, and I'm not sure if that's like if that's like just the way that he sings, or if it maybe it was early on in his career he had just a little bit of an auto tune. But he definitely has some big hits. Like we mentioned previously in the Christmas episode with Caleb Coho. He has some great Christmas renditions, and his songs like "Haven't Met You Yet" and "Home." Yeah, "Home" and "You're a Falling Star, You're a Getaway Guy." Your Everything is another great one as well. But I think there are 10 artists there that are just a little bit better. So
alrighty.
So now we go into my number 10. And you can't think of 90s country. You can't think of country at all, like pre 2000, without mentioning Shania Twain.
Didn't make my list.
Yeah, Shania Twain needs to be on this list because of her importance in country and what she was able to do for women in country. Like, she was right up there with Terry Clark, Faith Hill, those big names, Dolly Parton. Has had great hits that have held throughout the decades. Man, I Feel Like a Woman, I feel like is one of the big bar tunes, especially as of late. Party for Two is another great one with her and Mark McGrath. And just
boots
yeah. And based on, like, I've never seen her live, but my parents have, and a couple of friends have, and just based on her live performances, has put on great shows. Just has a great stage presence and really knows how to rock a crowd. But your thoughts on Shania Twain?
She at one time was the most popular country singer in the world. Her album was ridiculous. it was so popular that you couldn't turn on a dial anywhere, American stations, Canadian stations, and not within 10 minutes hear a Shania Twain song at some point.
Absolutely.
I I didn't put her on my list because of her longevity. I know that she's come back more recently and stuff like that, but she was gone for 15 years and didn't put anything out. And and I get that she had some personal issues and she was working through some stuff, and I get that, and that's fine. Everybody has has the right to do whatever they want. But for me, she didn't make the list because her career totality was a little shorter than I thought it deserved. She really did have that huge career that could have just launched her into the stratosphere, and it sort of fizzled more than it should have, I thought.
All right. Okay, so then my number 9, and this is actually the person that I feel that has a better vocal range than Celine Dion. And I was actually really torn between putting on this person and Alanis Morissette, but I think what this person has done in the 60s in terms of folk and just, again, how she was able to present herself on stage and just like get people adoring her and just loving her music. Joni Mitchell.
Ooh, okay. Not on my list.
Yeah, Joni Mitchell. I worked in a kitchen one summer, and I had a couple cooks that like pretty well fantasized about her. Just her vocal range and just how she was kind of so humble and quiet. And you think about the hits that she had, and I guess the covers that kind of went off of that. Like you get Big Yellow Taxi, Starlight Starbright, and yeah, just what she did for 60s folk, I think, and once again, that vocal range is beautiful.
Yeah, absolutely. You know what? In all honesty, I completely forgot. Like I completely forgot, and that's why she didn't make my list. You're right, though. She absolutely, in a more understated way, had a better vocal range than Celine Dion or an Alanis Morissette. So absolutely, yeah, she definitely deserves to be mentioned. I'm just sad now that she's not on my list.
Ooh, that's all right. That's all right. This next one might be a punt. I am not sure.
Okay.
This started out higher on my list, but as I got on more artists, it just kind of went back and back and back. Uh, People will be surprised when I mention this name because of, I guess, recent discussions of this band. But Rush is my number 8.
Punt.
Cool. That's a punt. All right. So now we go to your number 7.
All right. My number 7 is a band that is not known for the band, but for the lead singer of that band, also the lead guitarist of that band. I love this. I love this guy. I love this band. It's a tragic, tragic, tragic tale that he passed way too early. But the Jeff Healey band is my number 7.
I don't have Jeff Healey on my list, and I feel awful.
You should. That's bad. All right. The Jeff Healey band is a bluesy rock band that Jeff Healey himself is blind and plays his guitar on his lap.
I was just gonna say our top 10 guitarist playlist back in January. I think between you, me, and Sean, we had a great little kind of giggle fest about how great Jeff Healey was, considering that he's blind as a bat.
Absolutely, considering that it's one thing to be a singer, and being blind, but people like Jeff Healey, like Ray Charles, guys that were blind and played an instrument. Hats off. And at the level of those guys, like Jeff Healey, listen to some of his music, guys. The guitar riffs and the solos that he blasts out is unbelievable when you think of just how that. And then on top of that, he is the singer as well, and he's not crappy. He's good. He's a good singer. He's not great, but he's not bad. He's really, really good.
Some of his covers are better than the original. Like for me, when I play Stuck in the Middle with You, I play his version as opposed to Steelers Wheel version.
Absolutely, no. So this band 100% has to be on my list. It has to be 100% on the final list. And yeah, if you've never heard of them before, go listen to the Jeff Healey band. They're fantastic.
Yes, by all means, go check out Jeff Healey. Some great tunes, I guess, would be Angel Eyes, Did you See the Light, his cover of My Guitar Gently Weeps, Stuck in the Middle with You, and I Think I Love You Too Much is another good one as well.
Do yourself a favor and go on to wherever you download music and download The Roadhouse, starring Patrick Swayze. The soundtrack for that, because he did all the music for that. The band actually was a co-star in that movie as well, playing behind chicken wire because the bar was just way too brutal. So no, yeah, every song on that soundtrack is awesome. So yeah, absolutely, Jeff Healey is there. Okay, so number 6, right?
Yeah.
Damn, I don't have any here. Crap, that was to pass up. My number 6 is somebody that I grew up with, that was a mainstay in my hair selection when I had hair, and really did influence me singing wise as a vocalist. Some of his songs were some of the first ones that I ever sang in front of people. And that person is Mr. Sunglasses at Night himself, Corey Hart.
All right.
I love Corey Hart. Damn it. His influence, like I said at the beginning when Brooklyn and I were talking about how we pick these people, it was the crossover appeal that really did him in on pushed him up so high. He was one of the first people that I ever really noticed crossover and become popular in the United States as well, which is big. It's especially big for Canadian artists, because if you don't crack that border, it's really hard to make any money. So for me, you got like things like Sunglasses at Night or One Night in Bangkok. You know, that whole album is so good, and he's still putting out music. Like, he's released an album every couple of years. They're not as popular. But he's still kicking it around, and you got to give it up to him for that. Are his vocals awesome? No, he's a very good singer, but he had a very different way of singing. He had a more of a throaty type of growly when he got higher.
Yeah, I could definitely see that. Like, when I'm kind of replaying Sunglasses at Night in my head, yeah. I definitely hear that throaty kind of vibrato, I guess, that kind of natural buzz similar to what you hear in a saxophone.
Exactly.
But yeah,
what are your thoughts?
I only really know him really for Sunglasses at Night, another kind of generational thing.
Yeah.
I feel bad. I wish I'd had more to say, but kind of short and sweet.
No, absolutely. Okay, so then we're gonna move to my number 5, right?
Yeah. Yes.
All right. I'm expecting this to be a punt, but I'm going to say it anyway. These guys started out and they were a Canadian band. Every Canadian knew who they were. Their songs got played on Canadian radio, so we all knew who they were. They had one super famous song, and then it just absolutely train rolled into a bunch of favorite songs. My number 5 pick of Canadian artists are the Bare Naked Ladies.
So this is actually not a punt. This is actually when you take your Titleist and you see a beautiful par 5, and you're like, you know what? I'm just gonna bomb this ball, and you bomb it about 400 yards. That's no longer a punt. This is a drive.
All right.
Yeah.
All right then.
So now we go to your number 4.
All right. My number 4. Because this is the punt from your number 8. So my number 4 is Rush.
All right, let's talk about Rush.
So Rush to me is the first ever instance of timing change that I ever heard in a band. Now, because I'm a musician, because I played in concert bands, I'm always aware of timing changes and all that kind of jazz. No pun intended. but I never heard like a famous band play it. And it wasn't even me who turned me on to it. It was my mom. My mom turned me on to Rush because the We Are the World, or the Canadian version of We Are the World, which I can't. Was it We Are the World? No, that was the American one, right? What was ours?
I'm not sure.
I can't remember either. Anyway, so Geddy Lee gets up there and he's like, "Anytime we'll be there," and he fucking just lets loose with his super high voice. And my mom was just fell in love with him. She's like, "Whoever that guy is, I like his voice." And so I had to go out and buy my first Rush tape, and it was Subdivisions. And I I wasn't a big fan right away. It took a little while for me to appreciate Rush because they were so experimental with their sound. Like no album was ever sounds the same with them
No.
from one album to the next. It's completely different. It's what I love about them now. But for me, they're so underrated, but they're so culty. Like anybody who likes
Mm,
them loves them and will fight to the death on them with it. So,
yeah.
what are your thoughts on Rush? I know it was your number 8.
For me, it's some of three artists: Alex Lifeson, Geddy Lee, and Neil Peart, that are good artists individually, but when they come together, they make gold. You think, like, for me, YYZ brought me into like the instrumental kind of side of things, and like that you don't need vocals for a song to be really fucking good. Um, you get songs like YYZ, Limelight, Spirit of the Radio has one of the most memorable riffs in all of rock. Um, just yeah, for me, it's the talent that these individuals had, and then it's like, all right, well, now we're gonna form a band. Um, and like I think like we talked about in the Late Night Take 3 podcast, I Love You Man, I feel like gave them kind of a resurgent and kind of um it raised their kind of cult status, be like where it's like if you don't just like Rush, you love Rush. Um, but yeah, like the different kind of time changes, and like you think about even 2112, like one of the greatest concept albums in rock.
In rock, period. And I will take one. I will take one. Just the one tiny exception to what you said earlier. Um, Neil Peart is the best drummer in the world.
I am I'm trying to remember the name of the guy, but I think there's one that's better. I can't quite remember his name, but based on a couple of YouTube videos and just things that I have talked about through various drummers, there's one that is slightly better. Neil Peart's probably number 2 for me.
All right, I'll take that.
Yeah. All right. So now we go to my number 7.
Yeah.
So my number 7 is the right up there with Joan Jett in terms of the greatest female rock bands ever. Another great vocalist in Ann Wilson, Nancy Wilson on guitars. I'm of course talking about Heart.
I don't have it on my list, and
I figured Heart was going to be a punt, but
I completely forgot that they were Canadian. I completely forgot that they were Canadian because they moved so fast into mainstream that you forget where they came from, and that's that's a great pick. Shit.
Yeah, Heart. Yeah. Once again, right up there with Joan Jett in terms of one of the greatest female rock bands, not only of the '70s but like ever, pretty well. You think about Heartless, What About Love, Crazy on You, really, yeah, Crazy on You is the like where it's like, where do I see Ann Wilson's vocalist at her best? You look at Crazy on You. But yeah, what they're able to do, and just kind of how they influenced, I guess, rock from then on, and how they were kind of the example for women. It's like, you want to be successful, look at her pretty well. Your thoughts?
I'm just like you were with
Jeff Healey.
Jeff Healey. I am tragically disappointed in myself that I forgot this band. They were relevant in the 70s, the 80s for sure, and the 90s. I mean, All I Want to Do Is Make Love to You, probably had the most airplay in 1 year that I had ever seen anything. And there wasn't a girl that I didn't date at some point in time that didn't want to slow dance to that song on the dance floor at a pub or something like that. So, I mean, they are probably, if not the two top um, female artists that I can think of that really stand out. Like, you're not wrong. Their vocals are absolutely breathtakingly strong, powerful. You are 100% correct when you say if you are wanting to prototypical band or prototypical artist, you follow their mold because they did it all and they did it with class and style. So,
all right.
hats off to you. Number 6.
Oh, thank you. Number 6 is actually a band that we have talked about previously. I think in the community, you and I are the only people that have listened to them regularly. A great Newfoundland folk band. Multiple songs of theirs are in my set list whenever I play gigs. That is, of course, the Alan Doyle-led band Great Big Sea.
I love Great Big Sea, and they did not make my list.
Yeah, I listened to Great Big Sea so much growing up that they were just pretty well ingrained in my brain. Like, you look at albums like Up, Turn, Play, even their greatest hits, their greatest hits double album, which had older hits on one, but I think they also threw in like some newer hits as well.
Yeah.
They added on some originals. But they're phenomenal. And again, like I reiterated with Shania Twain, they know how to rock a house.
And they're fun. Like, that's the biggest part of them is like, watch a video of theirs. They're just having fun up there. Go to see them live. I've seen them live in Kamloops, and they're fun. They just have a good time. I remember first hearing about them when they were on the basketball soundtrack, because I'm a big soundtrack person. I love movie soundtracks, so I would go out and buy them all just because. And when I heard their songs, they had 2 songs on that album, I was hooked right away because it was just I'm having fun. This is a great just party band. That's what I would call them. You put them on and nobody can stop not bob their head, move their shoulders.
Pretty well. Yeah, and like when you mentioned party bands, and then for me, it's also they have that ability to tone it down and really provoke some emotion. Like when I think of the hit, like I think of their song Boston and St. John's. Very minimalistic approach. I think it's just a bodhrán and maybe some tin whistle and some bass. That's pretty well it. But then they dial it up to 11 with like Excursion Around the Bay is like literally just vocals, and it's pretty well a tale about going to Newfoundland and your wife being sick. But I played it at St. Patrick's Day, and the place was roaring, like belting out the song word for word. So yeah, now we go to my number 5. Yep. So my number 5, it's the Canadian version of Bob Dylan for me, one of the greatest lyricists of our nation, Leonard Cohen.
Nice, not on my list.
Yeah, I had in that same kitchen that loved Joni Mitchell. They also really loved Leonard Cohen, so I got to listen to quite a bit of his songs and just the poeticness of his songs. Yeah, sure, not the greatest vocalist, but the stories that he was able to tell. And you think about Hallelujah and how that stood through the test of time, and how everyone is like when you think about artists that have covered Hallelujah, you kind of separate them between the good ones and the bad ones, and you can't mention the covers without going first to the original.
Yeah, when you say Leonard Cohen, that's exactly what I think of. His version of Hallelujah is the standard bearer. It is so good. It is so haunting and peaceful at the same time. It was the second song that played at my brother's funeral. So so I love that song. I will be very honest and say that I'm not the biggest Leonard Cohen fan. I don't know a lot of his work outside of just a couple of songs. But when we say on the list, because of, if I can sit there and say, Shania Twain shouldn't be on the list because of her longevity. Leonard Cohen is the exact opposite. He should be on the list because of his longevity, because of how much music he put out there. So hats off again, because I completely missed that one.
Oh, it's all right. All right, so now we go into my number 4. I don't
Yep.
think this will be on your list. I'll be very surprised if it does. But this band pretty well resembles my preteen years and how they have, with every album that they put out, I love them more and more and more. This is Billy Talent.
Not on my list.
Yeah, Billy Talent for me is like just screams to me preteen years, and what they've kept their sound pretty well the same, but have stayed relevant to my generation, I believe, throughout Canadian music.
Yeah. So, like, just like a couple of my bands that I've picked, this is sort of a generational thing.
Yeah.
So I like Billy Talent. I mean, I'm not oblivious to them and stuff like that. I find him more of a yeller when he sings.
Okay.
So I can only take so much of it. So if one of their songs comes on the radio, absolutely. If I have it in a playlist, absolutely. But listening to a lot of it, not really why, and probably why I don't know a lot about them. But they're a fantastically talented group. So
they are. I think other than my gripe of them like kind of playing in D quite a lot, which I find is kind of redundant, I guess, in a band. I feel like if you're a band, you should be able to play in various keys, not just drop D. But I think of songs like River Below, Try Honesty, Devil in a Midnight Mass, Devil on My Shoulder, Rusted from the Rain. My favorite album of theirs is probably Billy Talent 3. But I have friends that I think two is better, which I completely understand. But yeah, these guys have played here multiple times, and I never got a chance to see them, but I've heard incredible stories of Billy Talent. So now we go to your number 3.
All right, my number 3. It was a toss-up between two bands that came into number 3, but I chose one. And once again, I doubt that this is on your list, just because it's going to be a generational thing again. I almost chose a band that I hope is on your list, but I went with Honeymoon Suite.
They're not on my list, but I am aware of their significance.
Perfect. So Honeymoon Suite is another one of those hard rock, melodic rock bands that were great for a bunch of years and put out a bunch of really good albums. Wave Babies. New Girl Now. Racing After Midnight was their follow up album to that album. Looking Out for Number One. Lethal Weapon. Was on the Lethal Weapon soundtrack. The lead singer of Honeymoon Suite has one of the clearest and spot on voices that I've ever heard in a rock group before. Usually you get like just the guys that are just pounding those notes out there and doing a good job with it. This guy's voice was just so I loved it so much. And not only that, I actually fit his way of singing very well, so I was able to cover a lot of their songs.
Nice.
But as a significant band in Canada, they also had a trickle over into the U.S., so they got a little bit of recognition there. But they are one of the most fantastic bands to see live. They can put a show on like nobody's business, and sometimes record success is secondary to what you can do live. Because I've always been tired of bands that put out awesome music but can't back it up live. So if you can go out there and play something the way you played it on the album and even add some stuff, you get my name on the list. And they're so high up for me because I've seen them in concert 3 times and they're that good. So
yeah, for me, Honeymoon Suite. I haven't listened to a whole lot of them, but whenever Haywire did a kind of a reunion tour, it was Glass Tigers and Honeymoon Suite that joined them, and they were able to put on a really great show. I'm sure if my mom and my dad were here, they could probably tell me great stories of Honeymoon Suite. But yeah,
the first concert that I went to was Haywire and Honeymoon Suite. Haywire almost made my list. They were in my honorable mentions. So.
Oh wow. Yeah, we'll be getting honorable mentions a little bit later here. But my number, so now I go to my number 3, and my number 3 is actually a punt from earlier, Bare Naked Ladies. Bare Naked Ladies are like top 3 favorite bands of all time, but there are I am aware like they're my favorite, but I'm aware that there are 2 bands that are better. Or actually, sorry, a band and a solo artist that are better. But Bare Naked Ladies, as much shit as I get from a lot of people in the community, Bare Naked Ladies is just phenomenal. Gordon is one of the best albums ever. And what they were able to do in the transition of pop and how pop got kind of techno-y in the 2010s, Silverball is a great album that has sort of this space pop kind of feel, and it's very keys and synth heavy.
Keep talking for a second. I just have to answer something.
Sure. Yeah. I'm kind of sad that Stephen Page was had like left via creative differences. I think they had a couple of gaps in between albums. I wasn't really a fan of their first 2 post Steven, but when you think about Gordon, Maybe You Should Drive, and just the hits that they have. You have hits like If I Had $1 Million, Brian Wilson, Alcohol, Enid, Jane, Grade 9, Yoko Ono. They did the theme song to the Big Bang theme, which is actually a song. You look at like that the Silverball. Odds are, what was the first one off of Silverball? Say What You Want. Just so many, and what they're able to do with sort of that call and answer style was just great. While we're waiting for Sandy, I'm going to go into the chat here and talk to some of you guys. I see mention here of Avril Lavigne, Nelly Furtado, Jonathan Peck agreeing with here. Everybody knows by Leonard Cohen is the best. It was the first song that he heard at the end credits of War Dogs. Yeah, absolutely. And then I see Arcade Fire. So I see Jonathan Peck in the chat. I guess kind of a new member. So welcome to Jukebox Trivia. We see Star Drew, who I've seen through the Take Three shows. Costigan. I am not sure who you are, but whoever you are. And Danny Cost is hanging out here as well. So let us know if you guys have a list for Canadian playlists. Let us know. Throw in maybe even like your top 3, and we'll kind of compare here. But yeah, once again, Bare Naked Ladies have had such an impact on me and how I perform songs. If I Had $1 Million is one of my favorite songs to perform of all time, just because of what you're able to do with a crowd and how you're just able to lift spirits pretty well on any kind of setting. Like you could have a dead crowd play the song, they're roaring pretty well. I was actually able to be I was like this close to being in a Bare Naked Ladies tribute band, but we had to cancel because we couldn't find a keyboardist or a guitarist or a lead guitarist. So it is kind of the what if scenarios. But that was right before I started to join this community. So yeah. So now we go to Sandy's number 2.
Okay. So my number 2, once again, was between 2 bands. And I went with the one that I like the best, but both of them are pretty much on par with each other. And you might have, not this band, but you might have the other one. But I went with my number 2, Loverboy.
Not on my list.
I figured. My whole page is filled with not on Brooklyn's list. So Loverboy for me was that Loverboy was they were the guys that I wanted to be when I was 10 years older, or 8 years older or whatever. Those guys, they were like the Stone Cold Steve Austin of working class, of music. They just working for the weekend, songs, Notorious. They're A View to a Kill. They had all of these great songs, that not A View to a Kill, sorry, but they have all these great songs. When you hear them, you know who they are. You may not know the band, but you know the song. And to me, that's once again, these guys had crossover appeal, and you could get them rock wise and you could get them pop wise. Whereas the other band that I was thinking about putting in here, more just the poppy side of things. So, like I've said, I want bands on my list that have a greater appeal than just to a certain amount of people. Which is why there's zero country people on my list. But Loverboy for me was my youth. Was going to volleyball tournaments, on the bus with the other guys, going to hockey games and being in a visitor, being in a visitor room and putting Loverboy on the stereo to get you pumped up for the game. So that's why they're so high up on my list.
Yeah. You summed it up perfectly. I wasn't quite sure who you were talking about, but as soon as you mentioned Working for the Weekend, it started playing in my head, and how they're just kind of these badasses, essentially of that era. I can't. Yeah.
And one of the best album covers ever. The two behind the back and with the
leather
pants. One of the best album covers of all time. So
nice. I wish I could say more, but if you guys have any opinions on Loverboy, be sure to throw them in the chat, and we'll read them when they come up. So now we go to my number 2. I feel like this guy is not on your list. I'm kind of surprised, but this will be an interesting conversation. My number 2 is Neil Young.
Ooh, not on my list.
Neil Young is one of those guys that you could throw him in a solo acoustic session by himself, or throw him in a rock band, and he puts out literal gold. Some like his great hits with by himself. Dark Horse. Crazy Horse. Yeah,
Crazy Horse.
Crazy Horse. Yeah, Crazy Horse. Crosby, Stills, Nash and Young. What he was able to do, and I guess from talking to people in the community, one of the best voices in music, and similar to Leonard Cohen, the great storyteller. You think of songs of like Heart of Gold, My Hey Hey, how he was essentially similar to Eric Clapton's Layla, put over 2 different in the acoustic version. I actually think the electric version is better. But then you look at such soft, subtle tones in Harvest Moon. Like that, for me, that's like the perfect song to wake up to on a Sunday morning and just start your day. Your thoughts on Neil Young?
Okay, so I'm not a Neil Young fan.
Okay.
Not musically, he's fine.
Okay.
I find his voice not great. His voice is unique, but his vocal talent is, in my opinion, in my opinion, I find his voice a little bit grating for me. There is no question that he's a great songwriter. If you were to sit back and read a book of his lyrics and just photocopy everything or print off everything that he's written and put it into a book and read it like a book of poetry, the guy's an absolute genius, like an absolute genius when it comes to writing. And I will never, ever, ever deny him that credit, because he is a fantastic writer. Like I said, vocally and musically, I'm not a huge fan of him. I was a bigger fan of him when he was with Crosby, Stills, Nash and Young, because I do like Crosby, Stills and Nash. So just adding Young makes it better. Even if it's just, by, how much, but still it's great. So, those are my thoughts on Neil Young. He's a great Canadian, He stands up for Canadians, and he's very political, and he says what he wants to say. And you know what, regardless of who wants to believe in his politics or his views, at least he's out there making them, and and using his power and his fame for that. So I credit him for that.
Absolutely. So before we get into our number 1s, I want to go through some honorable mentions. Sandy, whatever you have here, just kind of a brief kind of statement. Who were some honorable mentions from your list?
Well, I mean, like, I had Anne Murray down as as a great Canadian vocalist. When you were talking about Joni Mitchell, I thought you were talking about Anne Murray.
Oh, really?
They very much had similar careers. Anne Murray is very folk. She's very, she religious, to a certain extent. But she's such a powerful vocalist, and anytime you hear her, if you listen to music at all, or you're a fan of music at all, and you listen to all kinds of things, there's no way you don't distinguish her voice at all. The second honorable mention and the last one on my honorable mentions is, even though I wasn't a big fan of hers, she definitely deserves, well, two actually. I have two. So Rita McNeil is very, very, she had her health problems, and we all know those, very well. But a lot of people don't recognize her for the businesswoman she was, for the musician she was. She was a very talented musician, not just a vocalist, but she could play the piano, she could play the guitar. She was very, very talented, and she had a very good voice. I wouldn't say that it was unbelievable, her voice, but she very much had a place in music history in Canada. And the last person that I'll mention in my honorable mentions is, I'll mention Alanis Morissette.
All right.
She started out as a pop singer. If everybody's not heard of Alanis's "Never Too Hot, Never Too Old," blah blah blah. Yeah, that was her first and only attempt at the pop genre, and then she got angry. And when she got angry and she got upset, she put out "Jagged Little Pill." And you want to talk about songs being played by every girl on the planet for a decade. That album is probably, if you were to do a poll of Canadians of the 10 best albums of all time in Canada, it's on that list.
Yeah, absolutely.
Absolutely on that list. So those are my honorable mentions. Brooklyn, who do you got?
So I have over 10. I pretty well have I pretty well have a 20 list. So I'll run through them right quick. April Wine, they were huge over here. I thought of them mid list, and I'm like, okay, these guys are easily number 11. But just hit after hit after hit after hit, and what they were able to do with various vocalists. Sam Roberts is another one. Incredible live from what I've heard, and what he's able to do. His vocals were very interesting. Drake, you can't not talk about Drake, especially now with what he's done with the hip hop industry, especially staying relevant. Oh, Stan Rogers, Nova Scotian at its best, great folk, and a great storyteller. City and Color, Dallas Green, got to see him live. Another one that's very, very soft and can very much so pull you in, but then has these great hits that speak out to a wider mass. Chaos is one I was really torn. I wanted him on my 10, but one of the coolest, like one of the very few, I guess, jazz hip hop kind of. You can't really call it hip hop, but you can't call it jazz. But it's just so unique. Crab Bucket is one that you need to check out. Pop Return and Overdrive. Taking care of business. Alanis Morissette, you're talking about. Bryan Adams. My mother would kill me if I did not mention Bryan Adams, as Summer '69 is her favorite song of all time. Stomp Tom Connors, the great Islander. With the hockey song, Above the Spud, and then Nickelback. Sure, people shit on them, but they're successful, and they had some great songs.
All right, so I now have 3 additional ones that I have to add to the list.
By all means.
So Harem Scarum, great Canadian band, great musicians. The drummer actually sings a couple of songs while he's playing the drums, so it's no joke. Nice. Like playing some really good shit. So they're really, really good. They got a few albums, but the first 2 are absolutely dynamic. Nickelback was mine that I had. Well, and all you haters out there, suck it. They have consistently had #1 hits in both Canada and the U.S. They make a butt ton of money. They sell out every arena they go to. Suck it. And the last one that I will mention is a group of guys, a group of fellas that have made a little name for themselves, but they were absolutely fantastic. So one of my favorite hip hop artists in Canada, Swollen Members.
Yes, Swollen Members.
I did security for one of their concerts, and I did such a good job of getting Prevail out of the crowd because he likes to crowd surf, and I hauled his butt back up and put him on the stage, and for that I got to party with them all night long. And it
Nice.
was a freaking blast because those guys are the bomb. And not only that, but Madchild and Prevail are probably two of the best rappers that have ever put a mic to their mouths. So
Yeah.
those are the rest of my honorable mentions.
I would even throw Cardinal Official in that list as well in terms of one of the great rappers. I feel like I'm really hoping that we have the same number one.
I'm thinking we might.
Okay, so on the count of three, we'll say it together. Okay. 1, 2, 3. Tragically Hip.
Oh.
All right, it's Bryan Adams. Let's go.
So my number one is Bryan Adams. Bryan Adams has been killing it forever. You go back all the way back to Cuts Like a Knife. You know, you get Reckless, you know, where he had Run to You, Somebody. The list of songs, the hits that came off of that album, that was the first album that I ever purchased with my own money. My mom had bought me a tape before it was a mixed tape, and it had a song from Bryan Adams on there that I read or that I listened to so much that my mom actually had to take it back and say that it was broken because I had worn out the tape on it and get me another one. It was called This Is Pop or something like that. Just one of those, you know, K-Tel, you know, whatever grocery store mixes. But Reckless was the first album that I the first tape that I actually went out and spent my own hard-earned lawn mowing money to get. And I loved him ever since. And he's one of those artists that, once again, late 70s, 80s, 90s, 2000s. The guy just keeps putting money out there. And I understand why you picked who you picked. And sadly, they just didn't make my list. But Bryan Adams there isn't anybody, I absolutely guarantee you put on Run to You or Cuts Like a Knife, and everybody is going to know who that is.
Exactly.
Everybody knows who it is.
You think of, what makes him so great as well is his versatility in terms of his power hits and his ballads. Heaven is one of the most beautiful songs ever, and if you cover it, you're able to put so much power and so much soul into it. It's such a great one. I'm pretty sure, Sandy, you are now my mom's favorite ever, because Bryan Adams is her favorite of the artists.
If I've got a second just before we go into that. I went to an outdoor concert, and that was the first time I ever saw him live. It was the Grapes of Wrath, Sass Jordan, another person that should have gotten an honorable mention on our list, and I just remembered Sass Jordan, Extreme, Bob Seger, and then Bryan Adams, and it went from like the afternoon until like dark nighttime, and it was fantastic. He was so good on stage. Every song he sang was just like it was on the album. It was like listening to a live version of the album.
Yeah.
And that was great. So yeah, absolutely 100%. Bryan Adams is my number one pick for the greatest Canadian artist of all time, and you got for number one, and I can't argue there either.
The Tragically Hip. I mean, Gord Downie was one of the greatest frontmen ever. Lyricist, vocalist, stage presence. You think about that last show that they had before his untimely death. The emotion that you get from not only Grace 2, but when they come back, and then the last song that they ever play is Ahead by a Century. It's what they mean to Canada, and in terms of how they're able to tell these stories through different songs. Like, you think about Wheat Kings, Ahead by a Century. You think about Chicken Bones, 50 Mission Cap, Poets, Fingers and Toes.
The list goes on and on.
The list goes on, and what they were. what they were able to do and how they're able to bring everybody together. When that concert happened, the island pretty well shut off. It was like, all right, we're going to watch this concert now. And other than like you could tell Gord was starting to lose it just because his vocals weren't great. Like when I heard Wheat Kings, I'm like, this is the last time I'm ever going to hear it live, but it's okay. But yeah, it's such like that's Canada pretty well in five.
I would agree with you. I would say that out of all of the people that we've talked about, and so we're going to take crossover out of this.
Yeah.
If you were to put we're both hockey fans, so whatever Canadian team makes it the farthest in the playoffs is Canada's team. I would say without a doubt, and with every fiber of my being, even though I'm not a huge Tragically Hip fan, I would say that the Tragically Hip is Canada's band.
Absolutely.
Next would be Bare Naked Ladies, but Tragically Hip, the way that the country came together for the tribute tour for Gord Downie. Like I said, I'm not the hugest Hip fan, but I respect the artist that Gord Downie and the rest of Tragically Hip are. He's an amazing writer. He's an amazing song storyteller. I use that term very, very rarely. If you can tell a story in a song, you've done your job and made it meaningful to a lot of people. So there is absolutely nothing that I can argue against you having them at number one.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mentioned in a post earlier, I think it was the day 25, a song by an artist that is no longer alive. I was like go ask Sean and Sandy. They could probably tell you where they were when Gord Downie died.
Yeah, I was sitting on my couch watching the news, and then the breaking news bulletin came over Global TV, and it was Gord Downie has passed away. And I won't lie, like I said, not the hugest fan, but I won't lie, he meant a lot to Canada. And for whenever somebody goes too soon, it's an absolute absolute tragedy, and no pun intended. But this was something extra, and I'm not shy, or I'm not a man enough to say that tears were flowing out of my eyes when I saw that out there. So.
Yeah, I was in the middle of doing a stop for one of my for a delivery route that I was doing in the winter, and then I heard the news over the radio, and I had to like pull over and stop. I'm because you heard you when you heard that he was diagnosed with brain cancer at such a late stage, it's like, all right, you know what's going to happen, but you're never prepared for when it actually happens. And I remember the radio station that I was listening to. He's like, I'm supposed to play this song here, but we're not. We're playing Tragically Hip pretty well all morning. Yeah, just be able to bring a nation together. But enough about Tragically Hip. We now need to create the show's top 10 list. So I am fine with putting Bryan Adams at number 1 if you want that, and I'll take Tragically Hip number 2.
You know what? I'm actually opposite of that. I'm actually okay with Tragically Hip being number 1 if Bryan Adams could go number 2.
Sure. Okay. Tragically Hip number 1, Bryan Adams number 2. Okay, then we go to
number 3.
Neil Young, and then you had Loverboy.
I had Loverboy at number 2, so you had Neil Young at number 2.
Or would we go by commonality? Because I think our only common. Oh, we had Bare Naked Ladies.
Bare Naked Ladies common.
So you want to go Bare Naked Ladies in at number 3?
Let's do Bare Naked Ladies at number 3. I'm okay with that.
Okay. And then do you want Loverboy then, and then want to go? I'm not sure what it'd be next, because I think our only other commonality is Rush.
Let's put Rush at number 4.
Okay, that's fine. Rush, and then we'll go Loverboy, Neil Young.
Yep.
Are you okay if we put Leonard? Okay, so that puts us at number 7. Want to throw Leonard Cohen, or no?
I was thinking Heart.
I could do that.
Can you? Because
Because I
I'm
because
okay with
because I
them
because I
going.
feel like because I feel like if you remembered Heart would have been maybe a little further up on your list, maybe.
Oh, it definitely would have been.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah,
So
no question about that.
Heart is next. That puts us at number 8.
Okay, so let's pick a
Who do you what's the highest person that you have left?
the highest person that I have left is Honeymoon Suite on there yet?
No, we'll throw
Yeah.
Honeymoon Suite on there.
Honeymoon Suite was number 3 for me.
Okay. So the only one that I don't have on here, my highest one that I don't have on here is Billy Talent.
Billy Talent.
But if you wanted to throw on, do you want to throw on Great Big Sea?
Yeah, I was thinking Great Big Sea because we're both fans of them. So,
right.
Yeah, let's do Great Big Sea.
Cool. All right. So let me double check here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Oh, we have one more. We have one more spot.
All right. So, who do you want on off your list?
I'd like to throw in Billy Talent.
And I'd like to throw in Jeff Healey.
Jeff Healey.
Okay.
Yeah, because I completely forgot about Jeff Healey, and Jeff Healey would have been probably mid, like 6 or 5.
Yeah.
All right, cool. I like that perfectly. So I will do. I'm gonna do the falsetto and the numbers. And do you want to throw on the artists?
You got it.
All right. The top 10 Canadian artists and singers of all time. Yeah. At number 10.
At number 10, we have. I have no idea.
Jeff Healey.
Jeff Healey. I didn't write them down.
Okay. Do you want to do the numbers in, and I have the list here.
I'll do the numbers in. Right. So, number 9
is Great Big Sea.
Great Big Sea. We're going late to number 8.
Be Honeymoon Suite.
It's Seventh Heaven.
Heart.
Number 6.
Come a little bit closer, Neil Young. Let me hear what you have to say.
All right, we are now in the top 5. Let's do our number 5.
We're working our way to Loverboy.
Yeah. And number 4?
Slap at the bass. That'd be the Rush.
That'd be the Rush. Nice. Oh, I should have done that in a really super high voice. And number 2.
No, number 3.
Oh, number 3.
The most naked of ladies.
Naked of ladies. That's right. Oh, those guys always nude. And number 2.
Be the great Bryan Adams.
Bryan Adams, and of course our number 1, picked by both Brooklyn and I as his number 1 music artist is
Canada's band, Gord Downey's The Tragically Hip.
The Tragically Hip. Well deserved.
That is our list. I want to go to the chat right quick. I guess the big omission. I guess they're thinking the Guess Who.
I thought about the Guess Who.
I don't know who's more important though. The Guess Who or Burton Cummings on his own.
I thought of the Guess Who, and then I thought exactly what you said, that I thought Burton Cummings was actually more important to Canada than the Guess Who was, and that's why I left the Guess Who and Burton Cummings off my list, because I just thought there were more important artists.
Yeah. Absolutely. So that is the end of our show today, guys. It's a great time for the guys that have been kind of hanging out through the entire show. Thank you very much. For those of you who kind of checked out the announcement of Jukebox Radio, between the list that we have, we're gonna throw on a couple songs of each artist that are gonna be on there, so that you can check out these artists if you don't know who they are. I want to thank Sam Robinson for coming on here and being able just to talk about great Canadian music with us. Sandy, where can the good kids of the world find you?
Cool kids of the world can find me everywhere. I'm all over Full Metal Media. We've got a Full Metal Geek match number 3 coming up this Saturday at 3 p.m. Eastern. We've got a Full Metal trivia match tomorrow at I believe 9 Eastern. You can always catch me on Worldwide Movie Games, whether or not competing or hosting or being third judge, to make sure you guys are all in line. And you can catch me on Worldwide Movie Game or on Take 3 doing reactions, or on Jukebox with Brooklyn here, Multiplex Entertainment. We play in all over the place, guys. Find me anywhere.
Yeah, and last but not least, I am the Black Lantern Broken Veil. You can find me here on Jukebox Trivia every Mondays. We were supposed to do a match today, but due to some scheduling stuff and just life just got in the way. So we're hoping that's going to be up Wednesday. It's probably going to be Wednesday, but we'll keep you guys updated. You can find me on Take 3 as well, running the Late Night with Take 3 podcast, where we kind of shoot the shit. And I guess recently we've crowned a couple different late night, or no, I'm trying to remember everything now. Speed round mini debate, late night with Take 3, champions of the Worldwide Movie Games Network. Sandy was a champion, but he did lose to Matthew Rosa on a Paul Rudd themed debate. So be sure to check us out. That's going to be going up on Thursday because of the Collider Collision. And then you can also find me on Family Game Night on World Movie Games with Royal Flush, representing Atomic Nation, Multiplex, Full Metal, pretty well anywhere there's good trivia. Join the community, guys. This is a great one, and some friendships that I've made that are going to be lifetime for sure. So once again, guys, like, comment, subscribe, follow the Facebook page. If you think that you can step into the ring with anybody, really, be sure to get in the Facebook page. Check out the playlist, or the radio playlist that got dropped today. Over 250 songs for you to check out and just explore pretty well. So for Sandy the Sandman Robinson, I am the Black Lantern Broken Veil. Thanks for tuning in, guys, and as always, drive safely.